Hey, this is The Intersection where faith, life, and culture meet. I'm Eric Targe.
I'm Justin May, and today it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
It is. It is. We got wreaths up. We've got colors and all sorts of
Yeah, but specifically
stuff.
Christmas colors.
Christmas
And
color, yeah.
we're in a basement right now, so like we can pretend it's snowy outside, even though it's a really
If you close your eyes, it's snowing somewhere.
It's a gorgeous, like sunny and 50 degrees outside
I know,
right now. It's
really nice for December, and yet people are doing Christmassy things.
As well they
Have a
should
little
be.
Less, right?
As well they should be.
I got your Christmas card. Which
Yeah.
was the May children all looking in different directions. It was quite
You
a.
can't get them to look in the same
You
direction.
can't.
There's 4 of them, and yes.
So, what does Christmas look like in the May household this year?
It looks like a lot of chaos. We always have families stay with us,
Okay.
so it's a full house.
Wow.
Very full house, but it's a lot of joy. There's a lot of food. There's a lot of laughing and
A lot of out of town guests.
yes. When you have 4 kids, any is a lot, but yeah, we always have at least 3. So
Very cool. Any really fun Christmas traditions that you guys hold tight to?
we're at that stage of life, Pastor Targe, where we don't really get to do a lot aside from just try not to let the house burn down.
Okay.
So, like we watch a lot of Christmas movies. We do things that don't involve having to lose children out in public. What about you guys? What are you doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, Christmas, my family's in New York, so we kind of try and do the alternating every other year thing. We just did Thanksgiving, though, in New York, so Christmas is going to be in Chicago.
Awesome.
And so we try, when we're here, to kind of preserve some of the New York things while also doing stuff that are traditions in Becky. Both Rebecca and I are like huge tradition people.
Sure.
So, yeah, we love tradition. As you know, I'm half Jewish, and so it's like Fiddler on the Roof every day. Tradition. It's kind of how we vibe.
No, people took that as like a metaphor, but you literally listen to Fiddler on the Roof every day. It's weird.
It is weird.
It's
like
super
blasting
weird.
That's not true.
It's
That's
too
not
much.
true. That's not true at all. People are like,
But maybe
"What?"
it is though. Maybe it is. People
No,
don't
but
know.
so for us, for tradition, like we have a lot of traditions. Rebecca's father loves to read the night before Christmas,
Oh, that's
right?
great.
Like every
Yeah.
Christmas Eve. They do that, and they have a whole bunch of things they love to do. We've developed a tradition where Rebecca's siblings come over. Ever since before they were married, they come over to our house, me and Becky's, and they stay for Christmas Eve, and they wake up Christmas morning. We have breakfast together. I make breakfast. It's kind of
What?
fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. I'm not sure if we're going to do it this year exactly the same way because people are now in different places a little bit. But
Well, that's
we're-
becoming a lot of people.
it is because like everyone's having babies and
Right.
stuff, and we still have a small apartment.
I've been
in the
there.
city. Yeah, you helped us move into it. But yeah, we do that, and then for us, as you know, like the other side of my family, father's side is Jewish. Mother's side is from Puerto Rico, and so we do a lot of Puerto Rican traditions, and we keep that. So I just went to the store and bought a whole bunch of frozen patates, which are like these meat patties for Christmas, and so we eat those, and we really get our Christmas on. But also big on like, hey, we love having people over.
Right.
We love the Christmas parties. Love doing that kind of thing.
Well, and I think that's one of the great things about Christmas is like whether or not, you come from a Puerto Rican and Jewish background or just white trash background,
Oh.
you can absolutely use the holiday in order to have people over, be welcoming, show
Yeah.
hospitality.
Yeah, to just really love those who maybe even don't have a place to be loved.
Especially those.
Yeah, like I know I was talking to a family here in one of our ministries at Moody Church a couple of years ago. It was right before the pandemic started, and they were inviting some people in our church who didn't have a place to come for dinner. They said, listen, we're going to have them for Christmas dinner, and then as time went on, they said, you know what? Let's not just have them for Christmas dinner. Let's have them for the whole Christmas day. And so it became this whole thing. But one of the interesting things is there was a lot of pushback right away, right, from the kids. The kids were like, but Christmas is our time. Like we can't be ourselves if we have guests all day. And there's oftentimes guests just make things a little less comfortable, right?
True. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Why do you say that?
Well, so I remember very distinctly, I was one of those, I don't want to, impugn on
No,
other
you're
people's
good. You're
kids.
good.
Right? But like, I was definitely a selfish, spoiled kid. And I remember I don't remember how old I was, but my folks said, okay, guess what we're doing on Christmas? We are all going to be serving food like from like I forget what, it was a good chunk of the day at the church.
Really?
We were, yeah. So
Oh, that's so cool.
our
Every
church
Christmas.
it started, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't remember what year, but it was a neat opportunity for us to say, it wasn't in our home, but we were serving others. We were serving, like it was homeless and other folks that just were part of the church that, hey, we want to come and have fellowship together. And we hated it. We wanted to
Yeah.
spend our time on ourselves, but it really, actually, I mean, it sounds cheesy, right? But it's like you got the actual spirit of what Christmas, is supposed to be about when you start pouring into others as opposed to just focusing on sitting on the couch and playing with your
Following the
face.
whole mindset of Christ, that it is better to give than to receive, and
Right.
also
Well, to go incarnate, like I'm going to
Yeah.
go and be with others and seek after their good, consider others, more worthy than yourselves, kind of thing.
Well, I'm really excited, Justin, because today we're going to
Yes.
be talking to someone who's really become a friend, who really embodies the mentality of Christian hospitality.
Yes, sir.
Like, I think when people in the city think about hospitality, like if you're a ministry leader in the city, if you were to say, who is someone that comes to mind when you think of hospitality, most think of Brian and Heidi Dye.
Right.
They embody what it means to be hospitable people. And so I think we're going to have a great time talking to them today about their journey with hospitality and how we can join in on that journey.
I'm hoping so.
So we have with us now Brian and Heidi Dye. Welcome to the intersection.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you guys.
Thank you.
So, Brian, you do 1,000 things. So do you, Heidi. Could you just give us a little bit of like a summary of like what are all the titles that you two carry?
Yeah. So I'm an executive director of Legacy Disciple, which is a national disciple-making movement. I'm also on the board and staff of the Chicago Partnership, which encourages, equips leaders for the church here in Chicago. My wife.
Yeah, I work for Chicago Public Schools. Been working in the school setting in Chicago Public Schools for about 20 years now in different various forms.
Wow.
But my main title is just, I don't really have a lot of titles, but I really just enjoy.
You can make them up if you want. Nobody checks. Put it on a business card.
Executive director of the Dye Home.
Yeah, I just really enjoy loving on my community and also just opening our home to people and discipling, of course. That's the
Yeah.
other.
Well, we were saying just before you guys got here that throughout the city, when people talk about hospitality, I think anyone who's been in ministry in the city long enough has some Brian and Heidi Dye stories. Your home is known as a place of truly radical hospitality. And I think one of the questions that we've been just wanting to know was that natural for both of you? Is that part of your story? Did your families practice hospitality in the way that you guys do, or where did that come from?
I wouldn't quite say in quite the way that we do today, but both of us come from families that had pretty much open doors. Heidi's grandmother was kind of her example, and then my grandmother as well really always had an open door. My parents, even there were times where we had someone crashing on our couch who was a homeless guy. And so we both kind of saw that, just growing up.
But not in my own home. That was definitely not the case in my immediate family. We didn't have a lot of company at all, unless you were family.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So it was mostly just family, and it would be kind of unheard of what you guys do
Absolutely.
now. So
Yeah.
maybe for those who don't know, because there's going to be quite a few people at Moody Church, they're going to be like, we haven't heard of the Dyes. Maybe we heard a story someone said somewhere, but what does hospitality look like in your home now?
Yeah. So, when I think of the idea of the American home, right? It's typically a place of refuge, a place of rest, a place you kind of get away to. But in scriptures, we see that we're commanded to be hospitable one to another, right? And the word hospitable is really a conjunction of two words, xenos, which means stranger, and phileo, which means brotherly love. So it's really making strangers family, right?
Yeah.
So it's not even just having friends over, right? It's literally having strangers over. And so my wife and I have been married 21 years, Heidi and I, and we've just always, 6 months into our marriage, have had kind of an open door policy. people over for dinner, people staying with us short term, people staying with us long term. Right now, we have 5 guys living with us between the ages of 21 through 72. My father's living with us now, and so that's a change of events as well.
Yeah.
We just try to welcome people and try to make them part of our family.
That's awesome. So you guys are newly married, and I'm assuming you've got an apartment somewhere. Like, what was the first house guest situation? How did, just what were the logistics of, we've never done this? Because there's a lot of people watching or listening saying, that's I don't know where to begin. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Where's the beginning look like? How did
What
it
year
evolve?
was that?
Yeah, 2000.
2000. Got married in 2000.
Yeah.
So what did it look like?
So our first person that we had stay with us, and I would say this for anybody who's new, to opening up their home or whatever, was someone that we both knew.
Okay.
And both had a relationship with, and both were very comfortable around. So we just kind of entered in slowly, I guess you could say. There was a need. Somebody presented it to us, and they said, it was somebody who was actually getting out of jail, but it was a person that we both had a relationship with and a strong love for. And so, he was just like, can I crash at your place? Because I don't want to go back to my old environment because I'm afraid I'll fall back into my old habits and my old patterns.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a no-brainer for us. We just looked at each other and said, we love him. And of course we want to help him.
And this time we had a 1-bedroom apartment in the Humboldt Park, Logan Square area. And so he crashed on our couch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we figured, hey, we got a couch that's not being used in the middle of the night, and so let's let someone stay there. And I would also add that hospitality takes on different layers, right?
Yeah.
It could be as simple as inviting someone over for dinner.
Correct.
And so we always set an extra plate at the dinner table because we just expect that someone's going to show up out of the blue. But it could be, again, just having a guest room where you have someone for short term, come to town over the weekend, versus long term, and so we've never had biological kids, God just hasn't had that in our plan. So we've been able to be maybe a little more extreme or over the top than most people can. So we don't look at our lives as being like the model, for hospitality, what it should look like for every believer. But I think, again, going back to the scriptures, every believer should be hospitable, right?
As you think back to 2000, can you estimate like how many people you think have stayed with you?
Yeah, I know, like maybe 5 years ago we did a count, it was 200.
Whoa, 5 years ago it was 200.
Yeah. So I would guess around 225 to 2-ish, 225. So
Okay, that have stayed with you for more
for
than
at least 6 months.
For at least 6
Yeah,
months.
we're not
Whoa.
counting weekend
Wait,
guests.
whoa.
The weekenders don't count.
Weekends don't count.
If I'm a weekender, I'm a little offended, but that's fine.
Wait, so you're saying like with weekenders, you guys think that you may have had
we have weekenders with us all the time. But yeah, typically there's anywhere. We've had 3 people to one time 10 people.
That was
that was a little over the top.
So how do you figure out who to hospitalize, right? Like, how do you figure out who to fill of the zinnias? Because there are many strangers, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you got 200 people in 15 years of marriage, and now
21.
in 21 years of marriage, like, how do you do that? Because I think some people are like, I don't know where to start.
Right.
And
What a
that
daunting
freaks me out.
Yeah.
And there's no way I'm catching it up
Yeah.
with the Dyes. It's like keeping up with the Kardashians, keeping up with
Because
the
it's
Dyes.
definitely a competition.
It is. It should. Well, wouldn't it be wonder if we actually did like outdo one another in love? And like,
That's
it's going to
almost
be hard
biblical.
to outdo the Dyes.
Right. I think Moody Church should give a check to the family who has the most people live with them,
Amen. Amen.
No, that's a good question. And me and Heidi, even on the car ride here, literally we were talking through an individual who was meant to be a short-term guest of a few weeks to help out, and is going on about 2 months now. Wow. And so we're wrestling through that because right now all of our beds are taken, and he's on the couch, which then your clothes end up being on the floor of the living room, and just takes up space for people to hang out, right, and so forth. But we try to be on the same page. It's a lot of conversations where we both have to feel comfortable. We both have to come to an agreement, and then we need to make sure that agreement is portrayed, carried to the individual as well.
I think for me, just one of the most important things is just the mentality behind, I want this to be a safe space and a comfortable space for anybody who would come. And when I say comfortable, I think that is different for different people when they think about that, because for women particularly, when you say comfortable, they're thinking clean, they're thinking nice, they're thinking put together, no mess, those type of things. When you say comfortable,
And guys are messy, right? We spill stuff, we wrestle.
yeah. So for me, that's a different definition of comfortable. And I think sometimes people feel the need to apologize when people who are not familiar with them come into their house and there's toys everywhere because you've had your kids playing in the living room
Yes.
or whatever the case is. And for me, I say embrace it all. Don't let that be a barrier to welcoming people in, because it's like that's a part of who I am in Christ. My home is a reflection of not how nice it is, but how warm it is. So when I say comfortable, I focus more on the warmth of the place than I do on the cleanliness and the details. And I'm not a decorator. If you come to my house, I have nothing on the walls unless it's the holidays.
Yeah.
But outside of the holidays, my house is very bare, very plain.
Your staircase is decorated.
The
I've seen that.
staircase
The
is
staircase has
decorated.
all
Yeah.
sorts of words and fun things
Yeah.
written on it.
But
yeah.
Someone did that for us
Yeah.
while
So that's
we
awesome.
were out of town.
yeah.
it's
So
cool.
I just think it's really important to clarify that with people who are starting out on this journey, because if we put unrealistic expectations on what hospitality looks like, then it's going to keep a lot of people from doing that. But I want people to know that, if my house looks immaculate, then they're going to feel the same pressure to do the same thing with their house. So if my house is just comfortable and warm, that's what I want them to try to duplicate, not the fact that everything's put together and nice and all of those
Yeah.
things.
I know a lot of people, right? That's the pain point. That's the
Yeah.
pain line. It's like, I know I want to have people over, but I've got to pick up and I've got to do all these things. I know that we've talked a lot about Rosaria Butterfield's
Yes,
Gospel
love
of the House
that
King.
book.
Right, everybody
Love that
does.
book.
Who doesn't like it?
Yes.
But that was one of the things that really jumped out to me and my wife when we read it, was her like, all right, hey, you're here. That's great. Would you fold that laundry? Hey, there's a
Yeah.
pot on the stove. Can you take care of that?
Yeah.
And really folding people in.
Yeah.
The other question that I know that a lot of people are going to have, all right, you've lived in how many places since you got married?
Just two.
Just two.
Yeah.
How have your neighbors, over the course of y'all living this hospitable lifestyle, how have your neighbors felt about it? What were some of their vibes?
So our first apartment, this is kind of funny. So we lived upstairs from our landlord, and the floors were really old. And so you could kind of hear stuff, floors would creak and so forth. And so they weren't the happiest. They're great people, but weren't the happiest with how many people we had over. But thankfully, that was only for a few years. And then we've been in our current house where we bought 18 years ago. And we live on the west side of the city in West Garfield Park. And, initially when we first moved there, people didn't know who we were, and people were coming in and out of the house all the time. And so we had, later on, years later, as we got to know people, they would say, man, I thought you guys were the police. I thought you guys were a group home. We didn't know what you guys were, right?
Yeah.
And so...
Now we're just known as the church house.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
church house.
The church house.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
so-
awesome. So you're known as what do they mean when they say that?
They just mean that we're the Christians,
Yeah.
We did have a church in our home for several years.
Yeah.
But I think broader than that is just those are the Christians who love people, who care for people.
Yeah. And we've actually had multiple people on our block who have stayed with us, either short term or long term. And so there's just an understanding that, you don't do certain things on our porch that you would do on other people's porches, or, there's definitely a level of respect there, but it's not us. It's not us. It's Jesus that they see, and that's what the goal. That's the goal of hospitality. That's why we welcome in strangers, because we want them to see Jesus in us, and we want them to feel that there's something different, and be able to point to that difference as being Jesus.
Amen.
When we first moved on the block, there was this teenager named Kevin. who lived 2 doors down. He was in a foster home, and so we had a basketball hoop in the back. We would invite him, hey, come play ball, and we'd just bring out some drinks and stuff. And then that led to inviting him over for dinner, and then that led to him spending the weekend with us. And then he ended up moving in with us for probably 2 years or so. And just this past week, we're in Vegas, and now this is 15 plus years later. We're in Vegas, and him and his wife are being hospitable to us. They're taking
That's
us
awesome.
around town. They're treating us out to eat, and so forth. So that's really the heart, is that hospitality is not just a one-way street. It's we receive too from it.
And if I could elaborate on that story to give it a little more layers, Kevin did at one time make a profession of faith and was baptized, but was not living that out as an adult as he moved, just away. But when we were with him over just this past couple of weekends ago, he and his wife together said, we feel like the missing piece in our marriage is Jesus. And so we had never had that, like in recent years, had that conversation with them, but they've been married like 5 or 6 years now, and they just said, we've just been having these struggles that we can't work out, and we think it's because there's no Jesus. And so they brought that to us, and so now we're working that out, like how do we long distance, disciple them and get them connected with some believers locally. But it was beautiful just because, seeds that were planted 15, 20 years ago, it's just amazing when you see that kind of like
That is so
long-term
awesome.
fruit.
I love that like these people thought, okay, if we feel like we're missing Jesus, we're going to go to the Dyes. And people on your block are like, hey, those are the Jesus people. That's the church house. Like, that's just so cool. I'm like, I wish every Christian was known in their neighborhood as like, oh, those are the people that love Jesus and they exude Jesus.
In
And
a
yet
positive way.
yeah, in a positive way, right? Yeah, 'cause there's definitely like the, oh, there's the holy rollers over there. Or
right.
those are the people
Don't
that go
knock
to
on
church.
that door.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, so I feel like you have so many awesome, really good, exciting stories, encouraging stories, and yet
Yeah.
we both know the people that watch and listen to this podcast and YouTube show, and
Right.
in the comment sections, you know what they're going to be saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
You left out all the grimy stuff, like
Right.
what could have gone wrong.
What are you covering over?
So yeah,
Yeah.
like can you share with us maybe a little bit of like
Because it can't all be
Oh.
amazing encouragement.
No,
Of course
Yeah.
not.
no.
what went bad? Like, can you share with us a little bit? Like, what are some of the things that went not so well? Obviously, you don't have to use names,
Yeah.
but like, what are some things that didn't go so well, or maybe even some lessons of like, hey, don't do this.
Yeah, well, I can start. I can start.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are lots of things we could say here, but for the sake of time, So a lot of the demographics of our house are shaped by who is there at any given time.
Yeah.
And typically, you'll have a crew of guys who will stay anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and they grow very close together, and they become like family.
Yeah.
And they, even when they move out from our house, they still stay connected, and they're very close, like brothers.
Like roommate.
Like,
kinda,
yeah. But there was one particular season where we had a majority unbelievers over believers living with us. And that was the worst season in all of the seasons for us.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so
We would come home and there'd be physical fights going on. They have to break up. And, we've had a couple times like knives were involved, glass bottles were involved.
Oh, dang.
And so yeah, we've definitely had some challenges
Okay,
in that.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I just my word of wisdom out of that is just really like if the goal is for people to see Jesus, you need to have a majority of people who are Jesus followers in your home
Yeah.
over the
You need mostly Jesus
yes,
there.
yes.
Ooh, that is a good word of wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do welcome unbelievers into our house and to live with us, to visit, whatever the case is. But we realized from that season that there shouldn't be an imbalance.
Yeah. Brian, anything from you that you'd say especially?
Yeah. So, we've had stuff stolen from us. We've had furniture that's been ripped up and stuff spilled on it. And there's times where we get up and it's, people didn't clean up their dishes or whatever. And so there's the challenges of that, right? And I think it's just a reminder that ministry is messy. Ministry, costs, right? Love costs, right? It's unconditional love means no matter what happens, I'm going to love you, right? And so, yeah, there's definitely been challenges, and I think more than we could look at people that we've impacted and so forth, but more than that, I think they've impacted us. They've taught us what the unconditional love of the Father is like, right? They've taught us how to be patient, how to endure, how to
broken.
How to be broken, how to be prayer warriors, even right now, every night, we pray for at least a couple guys who used to live with us by name, who are far from God right now, and in very dangerous predicaments, and so I think God has just shaped us through it all. There's no way to protect us totally, right? You want to be wise. I'm not saying be a fool and just invite any random stranger into your house, and so forth. But but even when we're wise, right? There's the unknown, right?
There's risk.
There's risk.
Yeah. Yeah, but I will just say this: God is just so faithful. And when I think about the things that could have happened but didn't, because I think there's so many things happening behind the scenes that God is doing on our behalf that we do not see. No one in our house has ever been hurt or anything like where we've had to call the ambulance. Like God's protected us from sickness and harm and danger. There's so many things that we have been when you think back, you're like, wow, that could have gone really wrong. But God watched over us and God protected us. And we've seen that time and time and time again. My grandmother, who's still living and is in her 90s, she will always tell us, every day I pray, Heidi, that there be four angels at the four corners of your house watching over you. And I honestly believe that the Lord has answered that prayer. And we just feel so protected and watched over in spite of the challenges that happen.
That's awesome.
It's such a great, I think it's just a great thing to be pointing out because, again, when you think about, right, like all the people watching or your neighbors or the folks that don't know you guys, they don't know the scenario, and what are they going to do? They're going to come up with like, okay, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And for you to be able to say, oh, yeah, we've seen some stuff. Some stuff is going on. Not all of it was perfect, but you're able to recognize that, man, no, God is there, right? Like you've committed this ministry to Him, and He is not just leaving you on your own to do it by yourself. That's powerful.
Yeah.
For the person watching, right, getting back to super practical advice time. For the person watching, they're saying, okay, I'm convicted, I'm inspired, I've got a spare bedroom, or I've got a really comfy couch, and that room ain't getting used or whatever. Where does somebody start if they want to follow this path of hospitality?
I would say, should first start at the dinner table before a bedroom, right? It's sitting down with people, getting to know people, hearing their stories, walking life with them. And then, God leads through His Spirit, right, of what the next steps are. And so it'll be foolish just to, again, open up a bedroom to someone you've never really gotten to know, right? But there's all kinds of ministries, even here in Chicago, Safe Families, which I'm sure a lot of families in Moody Church
got a lot of families in that.
Connected with, right?
Yeah, taking in children whose parents are unable for a time period to be able to care for them.
Yeah, it's really to help the parents out for a season until they get stuff taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And maybe a college student, right? You guys are just down the street from Moody Bible Institute.
Yeah.
There's students who can't go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or different holidays, right? Inviting them over and encouraging them, hey, spend the weekend at my house and get a home-cooked meal, and college students love that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
We've
and I would say, too, just add on to that, and singles as well, if you're a married couple, welcoming singles to be part of your family, just because I think, just that's needed as well.
That's a good word. There are so many people in our church. We have a lot of college students from Moody to DePaul to all around us, and plenty of people that are single or those who are homeless or between homes. I think finding those people who maybe being on the lookout to say have them over for dinner first and then find out maybe they need a place to stay. I think it's a good point. It doesn't have to start with opening your guest room, but at least figuring out who would benefit from sitting at
And
my
what I
table.
saw modeled in from my grandparents was when they opened their house, the first thing I saw was we had missionary families that would come all the time through our church doors, and so they were always the first ones to step up and host those people.
Wow.
And so for that was kind of ingrained in me growing up, was just that we look out for people who are needing a place to stay, whether it's short term or long term. But they also ministered to people who they had a lovely, beautiful garden, and so people would just knock on their door and say, "Can you give me a tour of your garden?" Strangers. And then my grandma would go a step further and she'd say, "Would you like to come in for some tea and cookies?" And so it's just a matter of looking for those things, ways to connect with people.
Yeah.
Whether that's at the park, if you have children and you go to the park and
Yeah.
you meet another mom, or, just saying, "Hey, can we get a play date with the kids?" And I think the biggest thing that I want to really emphasize here is don't isolate it to just people who are Christians.
Yes.
Like really, really look for people who are not believers, who could see your life and look at that and say, "What's different about you?" Because they will ask those questions, and that's when you have the opportunity to really share Jesus.
Well, Brian and Heidi, this is our Christmas episode. It's Christmas Eve, right? We got the colors, the wreaths, and I'm wearing a Christmassy little shirt here. And so we're going to ask you a Christmas question to end this. What is your dinner table going to look like on Christmas night?
That's a good question. We haven't talked through that. We've over the last couple of years, we've started having more quiet Christmas, and so. But whoever is with us, we have a few people living with us who will be with family and so forth. But I'm assuming we'll have some kind of dinner.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think
She's starving you this year at Christmas.
No, I mean, I think the goal is that we have certain people in our lives that are not just friends, but they're family. And so, those are the people that we'll want to spend Christmas with, is people who don't necessarily, we have some family or some friends who are grieving because they have lost, they don't have parents in the city or living, period. So, just for people who are like thinking that the holidays aren't really a happy time, we want to make our house a place that they feel welcome, so that maybe we can bring a little bit of that joy back into their lives.
That's awesome. And that's something that each of us can do. We can find people in our church who we know, hey, they need some family this Christmas, and to welcome them as the family they are, whether they're believers or not yet believers. But Brian and Heidi, thanks for spending time with us today. Thanks for sharing with us and with the rest of the Moody Church. We really appreciate it.
I know I'm encouraged. I'm like super psyched to try to have more people over. Like, it's so encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for all that you do for the kingdom and the example that you're setting in the neighborhood. Because hey, that could be anybody watching, right? Like, y'all are special, but nobody's that special. Like, we could all be that.
Yeah. So if you want to do this, maybe you have some ideas for how you can do hospitality, or you've done hospitality, feel free to leave those in the comments section. Inspire others as we've been inspired by the Dyes today. Or maybe you have something else you want to say. Feel free to leave it there. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a like, or any other types of things.
Feel free to leave recipes for peanut brittle, a dessert that I don't care for, but maybe you make it well. So
or figgy pudding. I feel like that's Christmassy. I've never had figgy pudding.
I think that went out of style about 150 years ago. I mean, that's totally cool.
Merry
That's how you
Christmas,
rule.
and we'll
Merry
see you in the
Christmas.
new year.